So most of the business reporting that I do is on businesses being sued. So I thought that maybe it would be helpful to give just sort of like a very basic tutorial about good it's working. So like if you had to do a story about a business being sued, where would you look? What sort of information would you be looking for? And where might you be able to find it? So this is, in the context, the example that I have is of a business, but the same story applies to if you were covering an elected official or government agency or something like that being sued. The first thing that you want to do is to find the documents. So like all the information that you would ever want has been filed in a court somewhere.
Can we back up? No.
Right. So that's the thing. So you want to find dockets. The main place to search for dockets is PACER, but PACER is only for federal courts. If the case is in a state court, you're pretty much on your own. Yep.
Lexis, get back to us.
Yeah, so there's 3 big pay sites, Lexis, Westlaw, and there's a tool called Bloomberg Law. And if you're fortunate enough to have access to any of those, you should definitely go straight to those. I'm just using this for people who don't have access to that. And it will be the same thing. The same thing that we're doing in PACER, you would just do in Lexis or one of those other sites. So as I was saying, litigation, anytime there's a suit, all the action is pretty much in motions and briefs that are filed with the court. Those are publicly available. Anybody can get their hands on those. Some of the state courts make it a little bit more difficult, and they might even require someone to show up in person to get them. But for the federal courts, they're very easy to get. So PACER, the example that I was going to use is, I don't know if anybody heard about this, but last month Merrill Lynch agreed to settle a lawsuit for $160 million. It was pretty big news because of the money involved, but also because of the claims. There was like 1,000 former and current employees who are African American who claimed that they were being discriminated against and they weren't getting the same types of job opportunities as workers of other races. So that was a big story. So I had to write a story about that. Fortunately for me, we had been following the lawsuit for a while, but I thought as a good example would be like, okay, if you just heard that there was a settlement and you needed to write about it, how would you find out what happened? So in this case, I happen to know that it was in Chicago. So the first thing you want to do is, in order to find the docket for your particular case, you have to know a little bit of information about it. The more information you know, the easier it is to find it. So assuming that it's in a federal court, and the reason, or the way that you figure out if it's in a federal court or a state court is, generally if they're being sued under a federal law, which would be things like civil rights, shareholder suits, anything that's governed primarily by federal law is likely to be in a federal court. There are also some limited circumstances in which two people if you're from 2 different states, you can sue in federal court as well. So in this one, I know it's in Chicago. But if you didn't know it was in Chicago, you can search by regions, you could search by states. Sorry, it's in Illinois. And I know that Merrill Lynch is one of the parties. And just because we don't have as much time, there's a way to, I'm not as familiar with PACER as I should be because I use one of the pay sites. Anyway, I'm just going to put the plaintiff's name in because I know that, so we don't have to waste time going through all of them. Okay, so just so you can see, it really doesn't matter, just so you can see what the docket looks like. So one of the options here is docket report. So on PACER, you need to have you need to sign up for a login, but that you don't have to pay at this point. Everything that's done so far, you do not have to pay. You can run the report. You don't have to pay anything. It's only when you actually click on one of these documents, it costs 10 cents per page. So this is exactly what it would look like on many of the other websites, including the pay ones. The dockets are in chronological order. This is a bankruptcy case, so normally it would start with a complaint. The complaint is basically how a lawsuit starts. Somebody who worked for Merrill Lynch in that case would have filed a complaint, and you could click on this, you could go in there, and it would very orderly lay out exactly what they're claiming. In that case, they were claiming things like the employees weren't trained as well as other employees. They didn't get assigned to regions that had more promotion potential, things like that. But what you want to keep in mind is when you're looking at a complaint that those are all allegations. So I could file a complaint against all of you guys in here and say all these terrible things about you, which are not true. But you have to keep in mind that it's allegations, not actual fact. That's, I think, is the most important or most helpful part of PACER is, again, you can get the lawyer's name, without paying anything. And particularly plaintiff's lawyers will be more than happy to give you any documents that you want, any information that you want. They're good for quotes and things like that. But the thing is, what you want to have an idea of what it is that you're looking for. So the first thing I would look at is a complaint. If you scroll down, you can see there's, in the McReynolds case that I was trying to find, there was like 700 documents. So you don't want to have to scroll through all of those things. So the other things that you want to look for are sort of after the complaint's filed and some of the evidence gets traded between the parties. The next thing that often comes up is a motion to dismiss. And that's usually filed by the defendant saying, for some reason, there's something wrong with the complaint, or there's some legal reason why the complaint shouldn't go forward. It doesn't really get to the facts of the case, so but it's something to look for because a lot of cases get dismissed on those grounds. So you want to know why. If you were writing something about a case getting thrown out, you want to know why it got dismissed. And so you would look at the motion to dismiss and the court's ruling on the motion to dismiss. The other thing, I don't think that's going to be in here either, it's called a motion for summary judgment, which comes later in the proceedings before trial usually. And the defendant will say, basically, even if we believed everything that the plaintiff said, it's still not good enough for them to be entitled to any form of legal relief. So at that stage, again, it's allegations. It's not facts. So you want to be sure to report that these things are being alleged, or else you open yourself up to legal liability yourself. And then finally, so like in that case, the last document would have been a settlement. Would have been the settlement agreement itself, and that's also publicly available. You can pull that up. So if you're writing about the settlement, that would have the terms of how much money is being paid, who's it being paid to, why. Normally there's a disclaimer in there that the company paying out the money isn't admitting that they did anything wrong. And then if there's no settlement, there's no motion for summary judgment, there's no motion to dismiss, then it goes to trial, and there's eventually a jury award. That's another thing you would want to look for, and that would be listed in our hypothetical case here if I could find it. And that's when the jury finds facts. So a jury award is something that you could report as fact, or at least that this is what the jury found was fact. So there's like 5 or 6 categories of documents. That's what I would be looking for. Where to look for it. Again, PACER would be the first place that I would start if it was a federal case. Get the attorney information. I would go to the attorney first. Westlaw, Lexis, Bloomberg Law are the paid sites. And then if you're really stuck and you want to use free site, there are things like it's on our list here. Justia, Law.com, Law360, Google Scholar is pretty good if you're looking for a court opinion and you want to write about something that's already been ruled on in the past. Google search is good too. So like if you know that you want to look for a motion to dismiss or a court ruling on a motion to dismiss, I've had some luck just typing that into Google and the name of the case and finding some stuff there too. That's pretty much all I have because I don't have mine. Mhm.